That's actually the way he is. He is the characters in his movies.
I know what you're thinking. Mine's bigger than yours, right?
My friend has met Steven Seagal, so I asked him how Steven Seagal is in real life, as he also shared some surprising things about Steven Seagal that nobody knows.
Hey guys, such a cool video. I'm glad Rokas from the Martial Arts Journey did this with Jesse Enkamp, the karate nerd. Jesse actually was lucky enough to train with Steven Seagal, spend like 24 hours with him, and he put out 2 really good, really popular videos. And now we're going to kind of get behind the scenes stuff on that. And I want to provide commentary on that for a couple of reasons. Well, for one, it's just a cool video. But for 2, months back, I posted a poll kind of like letting you guys know that I spoke to one of the 4 guys on what I call the Mount Rushmore of action stars, which consists of Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and of course, Steven Seagal. And the poll results, by the way, I'm going to ask you guys who you thought I might have talked to. 10% said Arnold Schwarzenegger, 16% said Stallone, 17% said Seagal, and then the vast majority of you guys thought it was Jean-Claude Van Damme at 57%. But it was Steven Seagal. And I got to give a special shout out and thank you to Grandmaster Gary Henry Amen, who put me on the phone with him. And I spoke to Seagal for like about an hour. And it was kind of a private conversation, so I'm not going to really share too many details, but I could give basically my thoughts on the actual person, Steven Seagal. And it was a great conversation. It was like very informal, because it wasn't like an interview or anything like that. It was just like having a regular conversation, which was quite surreal in a lot of ways, because, you know, like a lot of you, I grew up watching these movies, right? And he, again, I think he's one of the greatest action movie stars to ever do it. And just having a normal conversation with them was quite something.
Some people left comments, why is he speaking with such a weird voice? He's just faking it. But from the very first minute I met him to the very last minute, he was the exact same. Now, if you're able to stay in character for so long, you should have an Oscar. And he doesn't have any Oscar as far as I know. That's actually the way he is.
I do have to agree with Jesse there. Like, when you talk to him, he's literally the guy from Above the Law, Hard to Kill. In Out for Justice, he kind of had, you know, like, he was a little more Italian because he played an Italian character, which made sense. And I know of a lot of his other films, like more the newer stuff, or the more recent, I guess you would even say in the last even 20 years, you know, 2000 and up, he kind of did put on different accents. But when you watch those early Seagal films, that's literally him. You are talking to Casey Ryback.
I'm just a cook.
You're talking to those characters because he's just got that very distinctive, kind of like lower, but really full of confidence type voice. It's kind of hard to describe, but I'm not surprised. Like, that's one of many reasons why he became the movie star, because again, he's such a unique individual. It's really fun talking to him because he does sound like the character from the movie, but it's just him having a conversation. So yeah, it almost felt like I was in one of his movies talking to him. Such a cool guy.
Cool guy? What are you, in 8th grade?
He is the characters in his movies, which made me realize he doesn't act in his movie. He's just being himself. That's literally the way he is.
And that's a point in a video that I made when I had a podcast with another guy. You should check it out. Link in the description below. Mike from Australia.
I just thought, wow, he's literally the coolest action hero there ever was.
You gonna arrest me? I'm out of bullets!
But basically, he's so naturalistic. So I always thought he was a good actor, because some people are like very awkward and very forced in front of a camera. And at least like in his earlier work, Seagal was just so smooth and natural. And that's like the key, I believe, to actually becoming a good actor, because it's so believable and natural. And a lot of people, you know, force it and don't come across too well. I don't know if he had acting coaches or if somebody said, look, man, just be yourself. I think the producer, Michael Ovitz, probably told him that, right? The guy that got him in his first film was like, dude, just be yourself. You're literally like the guy that should be the character in the movie. And I think that's how he played it.
And the person I would compare him to, and maybe they look a little bit similar, is Marlon Brando. Like, his performance reminds me of Marlon Brando. So it's so funny when people say he's not a good actor. It's like, are you kidding? He's so naturalistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I believe him.
Wow, look at you.
And that's what is important in a hero. As someone on the screen that's playing a hero, is you have to believe them.
So again, that's probably why it just comes across very smooth and confident. And it worked on the film playing these characters, because again, it was just like his real life persona in a lot of ways was like larger than life.
And I'll tell you why. Superior attitude, superior state of mind.
Of course, much more than that, because in many ways, he's like a martial arts nerd. And he told me himself that he lives like a recluse. He doesn't want money and fame and all of that. He's been there, done that. So now he just loves to study the martial arts.
Well, that kind of makes sense. So he's been a martial artist for such a long time, and he clearly has a passion for it. Like when I was talking to him, obviously we were talking about martial arts for a lot of the call, and he's such like a martial arts historian. And I talked to him after he did these videos with Jesse, by the way, and he kind of even had mentioned that's why I did the videos with Jesse, because he's the karate nerd, and he really appreciates martial arts and the history and all that kind of stuff. So him and Seagal obviously had that in common, and I believe Seagal respects what he does on his YouTube channel. It's really popular. But I think all the superstardom in the movies obviously took a priority, and it had a bigger impact than if he just ran a bunch of Aikido studios, for example. Like the global impact, most people never heard or seen Aikido prior to Steven Seagal coming on the scene, so people got like an appreciation for it and exposure to it. So I think his contributions to the martial arts world were way more significant because of the movies, and it worked out quite well for him. But now it's like he's coming back full circle and just, I'm pretty sure he'll still do movies, but coming back full circle and just way more passionate just about spreading and training the martial arts, which again is probably why he did the video with Jesse.
The history, the philosophy, he reads a lot. In many ways, I could see that he was a martial arts nerd, just like you and I are. He just happened to have a Hollywood career a couple of years ago as well. I think that
Yeah. See, the kindred spirits, so to speak.
that's why he invited me to come there, because he's known for so many things, but what he really cares about is the martial arts. And I was blown away by his knowledge, because I had no idea. I thought it was a Hollywood superstar martial arts actor, someone who does it for the screen, but that seems to be a very tiny part.
Yeah, so I don't know if Jesse, I mean, I don't know how old he is, but maybe before he met Seagal and did the stuff, I don't know if he found out Seagal at such a young age, obviously, went to Japan and run the dojo and came back to the States and had gyms in Southern California and done all this other stuff. So pure martial artist who just got involved in films in a very interesting way through Michael Ovitz, someone that he was actually training. So he had an interesting journey. I don't know how bad he wanted to be an actor. I'm sure he pursued it. Like, you kind of have to. I don't know if he like has downplayed that, but basically it was the right time. It was the right martial art, the right look, the right voice, right? And then just like the mannerisms and all that. And he was one of the guys that just really made it mainstream. There's so many guys that tried in that era, but they never got out of that straight-to-video land. But Seagal his first movie was with Warner Brothers, which is insane. Like, who does that, right? Who just like, okay, here's the lead for a movie from a major studio, and you never really acted in anything. What an opportunity. But just having the opportunity is one thing. Actually proving that it works and you can build a fan base immediately just propelled him for a whole slew of films afterwards.
I then asked Jesse what he was allowed to film.
You might think that there was a lot of rules and regulations. You can film this, but Mr. Seagal doesn't want you to film that. There was none of that. Obviously, he had a big scary bodyguard, his assistant and stuff. There was some kind of structure and security around him, but there were no real rules about what I could film or not film. So I just filmed everything. But I could tell that his assistant was not used to somebody filming him eating, because she said nobody had ever filmed him eating before. So I was like, oh, should I maybe turn off the camera? Did I do something wrong? But he was...
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I'm glad that he gave him just like full exposure. I think that was the whole point also why Steven Seagal did it, because he just wanted people to see the real him, right? Not just some like, okay, I think he was like used to that when he was like the big movie star, where it was like so selective, where you could only like show the best stuff. But obviously in Seagal's case, that didn't even really work, because there was like so much character assassination going on where people try to destroy his reputation and all this other stuff. So he probably just figured, you know what, why just try to like show what I want to show, which would be better than, having other people trying to make him look bad. He's just like, let's just let it be and get a real life glimpse into him. Like, what movie star would do that? That's so cool as Steven Seagal.
I was like, no, keep rolling. He was fine with it. In fact, because he's a director as well, he even told me the best angles, like, hey, maybe this you should shoot from that angle or this angle. And afterwards, when I showed him the footage, he even gave me some great pointers on how I could color grade the footage, how I could edit it together so it would be a great story. I think...
Wow, so there you go. Like, he's always been more involved than just wanting to be the actor, just being the actor. So obviously he's got a lot of writing credit. First film he directed was On Deadly Ground, And you know, somebody like him in films have like a lot of input, which they give. They're not, again, just the hired gun. Hey, you're going to act in this movie and that's it. And I believe that's one reason why his films were so good. You could say the same thing about Van Damme and Stallone because they had so much more involvement than just being the actor purely. So, and Steven Seagal's just very technical in general with his martial arts. So it would make sense in the films he's involved with, even from like a filmmaking aspect, he would be like a lot more technical about things.
I think that is also a major factor to why the video was so good, because Steven Seagal is the executive producer of my YouTube video.
The big controversy about Steven Seagal is his recent weight gain, but what I learned from Jesse about it surprised me.
So this is what he told me. He has some thyroid disorder. And I know some people who have this. And if you take the medication needed for this, a side effect is that you easily gain weight. And during the pandemic, a lot of us had trouble working out. And I think he had the same. And he said that when he grew up, there was some air pollution. And his whole family has this. So I think it's genetic, this disorder. Maybe he doesn't want to say this to people. Some people were like, oh, he's so lazy. He should work out. He's a martial artist. But he does work out. He's definitely not lazy. He was taking phone calls, going to meetings and working all the time we were there. A lot of people commented.
You know, that's an interesting point because, again, I don't know exactly how old Steven Seagal is. He's got to be at least 70. And usually when people get older, they cognitively decline, especially if they're unhealthy. And people might say, oh, he's unhealthy because, you know, he's gained weight. I'll say, talking to him, he is so sharp and intelligent. Like, I've talked to people who are his age, and they definitely slow down when you're having a conversation, but he's talking like he's sharp, just very on it. And because he stays so active and busy, and like Jesse said, taking these phone calls, his mind's obviously active.
That he needs to stop eating pizza and hamburgers. But actually, everything we ate was super healthy, super fresh, like organic vegetables and salmon. Again, it's not about his lifestyle, it's about his thyroid disorder.
Then there was another big criticism that Jesse addressed.
If we're talking about criticisms, one of the main ones that I saw was that his old stuntmen would become kind of upset that he was so harsh. And maybe you saw in the videos that he didn't hold back a lot, but actually he did hold back a lot. The thing is, he has such a natural build for tremendous power that he doesn't even have to try to hurt you. So I can imagine being a stuntman working in one of his movies back in the days, when he actually tried to be fast and powerful, that would probably be over the top for most people who are...
Yeah, I think that's one thing why Steven Seagal's and also Van Damme's fight scenes were so good, because they wanted it to look real on camera, so they do have to make like a little bit of contact. If you want more on Steven Seagal and stuntmen and all that, watch the video I did with Stunt Coordinator Conrad Palmisano, who did a bunch of films with Steven Seagal, including like Under Siege, Marked for Death, etc. Linked in the description below. But basically, he said, look, if you're a stunt guy and you're in a fight scene with Steven Seagal, it's not tag football, it's going to be tackle football, which makes sense.
We're not experienced martial artists. So I can see where that criticism comes from, and I understand it, because he had tremendous power. I mean, just his hand was so big, the mass alone would like fracture everything in your body if you put some power behind it. Wow. But he was actually very relaxed and smooth in his movements. But because he has excellent technique, then that means he has great leverage. And he...
That makes sense. Yeah, he doesn't have like all those hitches where you lose speed and power. It's just very precise. And again, it's because he's been doing it for like 56 years.
He has great structure in his body, and I think that is a little bit of the reason why he has some criticism for this.
Many people also have the opinion that Steven Seagal is arrogant, but this is what Jesse had to say about that.
Some people think that he's arrogant or full of himself, but I think there's a thin line between arrogance and confidence, because he knows what he's good at and he's not afraid to show it. But at the same time, he's also humble, because he invites me, he gives us plenty of nice food, he shows us around, he gives us private lessons, and
I gotta agree with Jesse there. Like, you could tell he exudes confidence. I didn't get any hints of arrogance at all. In fact, just talking and having a regular conversation with me for like an hour. And I believe he is humble. Like, he's just a martial artist that was passionate in sharing some history of martial arts. And, you know, like I said, we talked about other stuff, which I'm not going to get into. But, yeah, I didn't get like the ego or any of that, you know? I mean, he's a big movie star. He could totally just act like a diva if he wanted to. And he even said that like in some of his early interviews from the 90s, that he never really kind of got into that whole Hollywood game like that. And there's like a lot of fakeness. So I think he's really always just kind of been himself. And I think he's spoken his mind. And that probably ruffled some feathers, which is also why people have talked negatively about him.
And he's always very respectful to not hurt us and to make sure that we're comfortable and have everything we need. That aspect of humility, even though some people think he didn't show any in his techniques because he was so brutal. But I think that's because he wanted to show the techniques the way they're supposed to be done. And that's why he flew in his uke, the guy he's demonstrating with, just to demonstrate these things because he didn't want to hurt me or Oliver. It turns out some of the stuff was very painful, so I'm glad he did that. But the fact that he just thought about these things and even brought me a nice gift, the makiwara, the wooden punching board, that just goes to show that one martial artist can respect another, even if they're from totally different generations and different parts of the world.
A lot of people were also wondering what's Steven Seagal's opinion of Aikido, since during the video he barely mentioned it, and here's why.
It turns out he's not really fond of modern Aikido, or rather he thinks the original form of Aikido is more effective. So
that makes sense. Like, even back in the early 80s, his dojos were Tenshin Aikido. So it was kind of like that pre-war Aikijitsu. And you could see that in his films, because people say, oh, you don't even attack or strike in Aikido. But he was always like striking people, right? And then breaking their arms.
So that is perhaps where his interest lies these days, even though he's known as an Aikido master. And so he loves to go back in history and look at the way the samurai would fight on the battlefield. And then he tries to bring that knowledge back and kind of revive or reinterpret Aikido or Aikijutsu or what. Yeah, there are many different terms for this kind of movement. So that's why we didn't mention a lot of Aikido, except sometimes he would show this move is what they do in modern Aikido. But the original way you would do it is like bam, and it would be like straight to the point, and not this circular, slow, soft movement which we usually view today.
That also brought up that Steven Seagal doesn't like a currently very popular martial art, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he had a very interesting reason as to why.
You know what's interesting? So his daughter actually trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I did a whole video about his daughter. You should also watch. I'll link it in the description below. But that was a daughter. He has more than one, but that's the daughter he had with Kelly LeBrock, who was the co-star in Hard to Kill with him.
Spoke a lot about how the samurai never wanted to go to the ground. And he was a little bit upset, maybe is the right word, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was becoming so popular because he didn't like that they called it Jiu-Jitsu. He thinks it should be called something different because Jiu-Jitsu came from the samurai. And again, they never wanted to go to the ground on the battlefield with a heavy armor, just trying to stand up in that thing as somebody shoves a knife in your side. So he was all about going back to the roots and staying true to the art as a killing method. Not even a martial art, but like a warfare battle stuff. And that's why some of his techniques were pretty rough.
Another question that everybody keeps asking Jesse is how he got to meet and film with Steven Seagal to begin with, and even if he had to pay Steven for the opportunity.
There was no exchange of money at all.
He invited.
I believe that. I don't think there was any exchange of money or anything. Like I said, Steven Seagal had briefly mentioned Jesse, and because Jesse's a karate nerd and kind of respects what Jesse does, I think he just wanted to do that, and let people kind of see the real him, which those two videos, by the way, which got millions of views, those were amazing. Like this is when you see like the interview, for example, Seagal did with Scott Adkins, and you see the stuff with Jesse, and I could even just say my conversation, and again, it is a normal conversation. It wasn't set up like an interview or anything formal. It was just he was like at home. Like his dog came at one point, and he's always been an animal lover, an animal rights activist. They even have the whole thing in Out for Justice about that with the puppy that dude throws on the on the road. So yeah, he's just a guy. He loves martial arts, loves animals.
I'm an animal lover,
Animal lover?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it went. Nobody was more surprised than me when he reached out to me. Obviously, I thought it was a scam or something, because it was in Dubai. I didn't know he lives in Dubai. I thought he lives in LA or something. But obviously, he left Hollywood and all of that behind and has a different kind of lifestyle right now. But that was a total shock for me and a huge honor. I know that he has a reputation for many other things, but I've never been interested in that. I am a martial artist. What I care about is the fighting arts. My thing is, I don't care about your religion, your ethnicity, your political views. And I didn't ask even any questions about that, because honestly, I couldn't care less. What you do with your private life, that's your business, none of my business. Martial arts is my interest. And I've met many karate masters, even in Okinawa, who are the complete opposite outside of the dojo. And some of them will almost be like douchebags. I'm sorry to say it, but here's the thing. You don't have to be a perfect human being to be a martial artist. None of us are, I'm pretty sure. And it's our imperfections that define who we are. This is a quote by Aristotle. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to hold two conflicting thoughts in your head at the same time. It's possible to meet somebody with a reputation or with some characteristics you don't agree with and still learn a lot. Because again, none of us are perfect.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And like any of those stories and allegations about Seagal and his personal life, we don't really know if that's true, man. There really have been no hard evidence. And whether it's the mainstream media or other actors or whatever, some of them who've never even like worked with them will come out and say stuff. If you repeat a big lie enough, people will eventually believe it. I don't know the exact quote, but basically that's the concept. I mean, think about, like, I did a reaction video to Freddie Prinze Jr. sharing his story of the Gene LaBelle choking Seagal. It's just like, okay, so you weren't there. Kevin Hart also shared this story. It's like, you weren't there. You heard it second, third hand, maybe off of somebody else. Added a couple details. Like Freddie Prinze, for example, didn't even know the right movie it was on. I forget what movie he said, but it happened on Marked for Death. So with me on my channel, I talked to Conrad Palmisano, who was a stunt coordinator, who worked with Seagal, who brought Gene LaBelle there for a day and seen everything. I also had setman Stephen Lambert, who was there. So I get real witnesses telling it firsthand.
There's two martial arts artists playing with each other for a moment, but there was never anything violent. There was never anger.
You know, they didn't like tell me, and then I tell it secondhand. I'm getting the source anyway. You can't really believe. Who knows what's true out there as far as some of the stories related to Steven Seagal.
I collect those stories like jewels. Anytime there's a Steven Seagal story.
All I can say is I don't think there should be a doubt in anybody's mind that he is an amazing martial artist. He did amazing contributions to action and martial arts film. And at the end of the day, he is such a badass, and I think he should be respected for that. So anyway, it'll be curious to see if Seagal and Rokas from the martial arts journey ever do anything, because I even made a video, you know, is Rokas the anti-Steven Seagal? You know, everything that Steven Seagal to kind of do to put Aikido in the spotlight, make it great. It's almost like Rokas, with his specific journey and his version of Aikido that he learned, kind of, it didn't make it sound so good. Anyway, comment below what do you guys think about Steven Seagal.